This is a Sandler training audiobook, produced and distributed by Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, in partnership with Sandler Training. Succeed, the Sandler Way. 14 Personal and Professional Breakthroughs. By Carl Scheibel and Adam Boyd. Narrated by Sean Pratt. We hope you enjoy this program. Forward. For as long as we've been delivering training, Sandler trainers have been on the receiving end of unprompted, unsolicited comments like these. The Sandler training had a positive impact on my entire life, not just on my income. This didn't just change my sales performance, it changed the way I interacted with my family, and it improved my life at home. And not only did the Sandler principles change the way I communicated with prospects and customers, they improved my relationships with everyone else, including the people with whom I worked. These kinds of personal transformations bring home a core truth about the system devised by our founder, David Sandler. Ultimately, implementing the Sandler Selling System isn't just about becoming a better salesperson. It's about becoming a better person, period. Successfully training salespeople in the Sandler methodology inevitably means helping them to bring about their own breakthroughs that end up affecting multiple areas of their lives. All of us who have conducted training sessions have seen firsthand transformative experiences that took our participants well beyond the realm of explosive growth in prospecting, qualifying and closing, and creating new possibilities for growth in many areas. All of us have been moved by those stories. For some time, we've been considering the possibility of collecting into a single volume a number of these accounts, stories that focused not just on the sales numbers, but also on the human dimension. When Carl Scheibel and Adam Boyd approached us about such a project, it was easy to say yes. What you will find in this audiobook is not only a remarkable testament to the effectiveness of the Sandler Selling System methodology, but also a ringing endorsement of the enduring impact of these two Sandler trainers. They have shown us all, not only through their clients' examples, but also through their own, what it truly means to succeed, the Sandler Way. David H. Mattson, President and CEO, Sandler Training. Introduction. Congratulations on choosing this audiobook. Perhaps you bought it yourself, or perhaps someone who cares about you gave it to you. Whatever the case, you have a desire to succeed. Before you start listening, we would like to set some clear expectations and discuss the choices that you will be facing when you finish. True success, we believe, comes to those who strive to overcome not just external challenges, but internal ones as well. Creating these internal breakthroughs sets you on the path to the most meaningful successes, not only in sales, but in other areas of your life if you so choose. In this book, we'll be sharing true stories with you about people who've done exactly that, including ourselves. The guiding principle for creating a breakthrough is deceptively simple sounding. Be candid with yourself. We have been brutally honest about our own fears and flaws, and so have the people we've interviewed. Taking a good hard look at yourself is a prerequisite of any breakthrough. Only by clearly seeing where you are now can you break through to where you want to be. We realize it's possible that you chose this audiobook because you recognized the name, Sandler Training. And if that's the case, the odds are good that you sell for a living or work with someone who does. If you're like most of the salespeople we work with, you're eager to create a financial breakthrough. We're willing to bet, though, that you also feel a level of discomfort with certain aspects of selling. Cold calls may seem intimidating. Perhaps you find it easy to talk to low-level clients, but you're hesitant about calling on the C-level. Maybe you have trouble discussing money, dealing with resistance at the closing, or conveying value in the face of intense competition. Many salespeople don't know how to deal with such challenges. They're afraid to admit that they're deeply uneasy about these situations. Usually, they choose to tough it out until they change companies, hoping for some relief. Then they take their negative habits and attitudes to the next job. Some salespeople tolerate this kind of discomfort for their entire careers. blaming outside forces like the economy or my boss for the quality of their lives. They don't reach a point where they say to themselves, "You know what? I've had enough. Something has to change, and the change starts with me." This book contains a series of first-person interviews with salespeople, sales managers, and CEOs who have had enough. All the professionals we interviewed decided that it was not external circumstances, but their own self-limiting beliefs that were keeping them from realizing their dreams and aspirations. If this book does its job, you will reach the same conclusion and take effective action on that life-changing discovery. If you decide to keep listening, here is our request. Please take your time and listen to every chapter carefully. Listen for the similarities in the breakthrough stories for each person. Note the chapters that most resonate with you, and listen to them as often as necessary. Have your favorite method of taking notes handy, so you can jot down ideas as you go. If some of the stories make you uncomfortable, be encouraged. That's a sign that you've encountered an experience that's relevant to your world. Keep listening. Be willing to move outside of your comfort zone. The people in this book were not natural-born salespeople. In fact, all of them were quite the opposite. What they have in common is purpose and vision, along with the desire and commitment to make constructive changes. All of them reached a point in their careers where they knew deep down that getting by was not working for them. If you're still listening, we're assuming that you know that too, and are willing to take action on what you know. Common themes. You'll see some common themes in all of these breakthrough artists. First, they realized that they had internal beliefs that were negatively impacting their behaviors on sales calls or other professional situations. Next, they admitted the severity of the financial consequences that those beliefs were causing. Then, they worked hard to create an inventory of new beliefs that were more productive. And finally, they persevered to put those beliefs into practice, even though it was uncomfortable at first. Over time, they gradually replaced self-defeating attitudes with ones that led to positive actions. In each and every case, the results were amazing, both financially and on a personal level. About Sandler Training. Sandler Training delivers over 450,000 hours of sales and sales management training each year. That means that, conservatively, the Sandler Network coaches and trains upwards of 20,000 people a year. The vast majority of the people who attend a Sandler program love what we share with them and put it into action. However, not everyone fully adopts the attitudes, techniques, and behaviors that we teach. To be honest, this is the most disappointing part of our job. We want as many people as possible to break through so they are selling stress-free, making more money, and achieving their goals. That's why we wrote this book. The results that are shared here are not meant to highlight our particular training center and clients as being somehow special. We are only one out of over 250 Sandler training centers worldwide. We are only 2 trainers out of close to 700 around the world. These results are indicative of the results delivered by the entire Sandler network. Once you finish this book, you will have 2 choices. You can keep selling the way you are today and get the same results, or you can seek out a Sandler trainer in your city, a professional who is ready, willing, and able to help you to break through the Sandler way and take the next step on the success journey. Carl Scheibel and Adam Boyd. Part 1. Breaking Point or Turning Point. In this part of the book, we will each share our own stories of personal and professional breakthroughs using the Sandler principles. Neither of us consider ourselves to be a natural-born salesperson. We surely weren't running around when we were little kids yelling, "Look at me! I'm a salesperson!" while all of our friends pretended to be firemen or astronauts. When you hear our stories, you'll see that we both were weak in sales. In fact, We now know that we were so weak early in our careers that there was no chance that we could have made it to where we are now without the help of our peers in the Sandler network, our coaches, and the volumes of Sandler reinforcement material we devoured. If we can make it, you can make it. We could never have written a plausible book about breakthroughs if we hadn't committed to the process of creating them in our own lives. Chapter 1. Closing the Best Deal of All. Luck is preparation, meeting opportunity. David Sandler. Carl Scheibel. My very first memory of sales is as a 9-year-old kid selling candy for the YMCA. My dad worked out a simple script for me and had me memorize it. I can still recite it verbatim 43 years later. My father is a very successful businessman who pushed my siblings and me to succeed in everything we did. Failure was not in his vocabulary. He drilled me on the behavior needed to succeed as a candy salesperson, and sent me out the door with the rallying cry, "You will sell more than anybody." I sold so much candy going door to door, to both homes and businesses, that eventually the YMCA could not provide me with any more inventory to sell. I sold almost as much as the rest of the membership combined. Was I a competent salesperson? Not really. I had a number of special circumstances in my favor. I was selling something that people wanted, at a low price, and they were supporting a good cause. How many people will reject a young kid from the YMCA who's only asking for $1? This early sales experience taught me something I could only understand in hindsight. In spite of all the yeses my pitch received, I recall one vivid no. I belonged to the Maplewood branch of the YMCA, a branch located in our city. While I was delivering my pitch to a woman way out in the suburbs, she asked, "What branch of the Y do you belong to?" I thought for a moment and then said, "Greece, a suburban branch," believing she would not want to support the inner city branch. Quickly and sternly, she said, "No," and slammed the door. Walking down the driveway, my head down with rejection, I noticed my name tag, Carl Scheibel, Maplewood YMCA. I still recall the embarrassment and guilt I felt. It was the last time that I ever lied on a sales call. Here I was, a 9-year-old salesperson, and my instinct was to lie. Of course, my intent was not to deceive, but to give an answer that I thought the prospect wanted to hear. In retrospect, I realized this was an early warning sign of my deep-seated need for approval. Beyond the paper route. High school provided me my next selling experience. I wanted to attend a private school, St. Thomas Aquinas. My dad, who had attended Aquinas, sat me down the summer before my first year and said that if I wanted to go to that school, I would have to pay my own way. After all, that was what he had done. I protested. "Are you kidding me? My paper route won't cover that." Back in 1975, the $800 tuition was a lot of money. Fortunately, my dad had a plan. He always had a plan. He said that he would help me set up a business producing and selling notebook and paper products for my fellow students. Printing was a natural for me. I was a 4th-generation printer and grew up in the craft. That summer, I opened shop within my dad's printing company and started to print notebook paper. I also printed jobs like tickets, stationery, and flyers for small businesses. One time in 9th grade, while selling paper out of my locker, I received a summons to the dean's office. When I got there, the dean of students proceeded to reprimand me for selling something that competed with the school bookstore, even though my product was of a higher quality. My eyes welled up as I explained that I had to pay my way through school and that I needed the business. Fortunately, the school respected entrepreneurship. They started to give me some of their small printing jobs. I eventually was handling most of their printing needs, their stationery, tickets, and brochures. Business grew to the point that I had to borrow $5,000 from my grandmother to buy additional equipment. Necessity, fear, and desperation can be great motivators. I wanted to attend Aquinas badly enough to stand my ground when confronted by the dean, and I won his support. If I hadn't done that, I'm not sure how I would have made it through school. I maintained the printing business into college until I dropped out at the end of my second year. Actually, I was on the verge of being asked to leave after having achieved a 1.2 cumulative grade point average. But that's a topic for another book. High anxiety. Not counting asking girls out, I experienced my first sales call anxiety in college. I needed more sales to pay for the higher college tuition, so I had to prospect for new business. After my last class of the day, I would run to my car, slap on a dress shirt and tie, and call on nearby companies to sell printing. I remember feeling really anxious about selling. Looking back, I can see that I feared rejection and felt needy when having to ask for business. The root cause of that uncomfortable feeling was a mystery to me. In high school, I was compelled to sell due to the fear of not being able to go to Aquinas. In college, I didn't feel as strongly about doing the academic work, so the scales of my anxiety tipped from a healthy fear, not going to Aquinas, toward an unhealthy fear of rejection. As a result, I did not prospect nearly as much as necessary. After my sudden exit from college, I went to work in my dad's printing company in a production capacity. I spent 9 years working for my father before I decided to start my own company. Enter the mentor. My dad deserves a sincere thank you for all he did for me. I had told him that eventually I wanted to be a company president, and he had the foresight to suggest I mentor under C.S. Chick Lewis. Chick was a management consultant, strict as a drill sergeant, but also a person who cared deeply. He saw me as a long shot at running my own company because I had flunked out of school. He gave me, in his words, an MBA the hard way. I studied under him for those 9 years. I had a sound business idea, a whole new business concept, in fact, a good reputation in the printing industry, and an insane work ethic. But no money. Even with my personal guarantee, putting up everything I owned as collateral, I found I could only cover a portion of what I needed to open the business. My dad stepped up and backed me by co-signing a loan for the additional $1 million I needed. All this caused enormous pressure because I did not want to let anyone down, especially my father. My plan was simple, and in hindsight, a bit naive. I was going to be the inside guy. I would oversee software development, enhance production, and manage my people. Like many young entrepreneurs, I saw the sales department as a black box and had no idea how to run it effectively. I had a great product and service and thought all I needed was a couple of salespeople to sell it for me. I hired 2 established sales representatives with plenty of industry experience and paid them both a large salary, a $90,000 package back in 1991. I didn't mind paying them well if they sold. The only problem was they didn't bring in sales. Before long, I was 6 months into the business and bleeding cash. My line of credit was running out. I was terrified of defaulting on my dad as well as losing my house. I suffered from horrible stress under all this pressure. Lobster for 2, please. My breaking and turning point came when I was reviewing receipts. I saw that one of my salespeople had submitted a dinner check for an unusually large amount of money. I asked her what the receipt was for, and she responded that it was for a lobster dinner where she treated a prospect who had ultimately said no thanks to her proposal. After I heard this, I walked back to my office, shut the door, turned off the lights, and started crying. I knew then that my 2 salespeople were not going to sell anything. I didn't know what to do. I came to the conclusion that I had to fire them both, and I delayed this decision for several more weeks because I was personally terrified at the prospect of selling. I fired them on a Friday, so I had a few days until I was forced to run the gauntlet of making sales calls myself. My strategy was pretty primitive. I would show up nervously at a prospect's office and ask for an opportunity to bid for a project. I was willing to stay until they gave me a chance or until they called the cops. I am not exaggerating. I was that desperate. Looking back, I'm sure that the prospects saw my fear and desperation and took advantage of this. I called on prospects with the intention of making a presentation, asking for the order, and then handling objections. As a result, I ended up chasing opportunities for months on end, trying to get them to close. It was exhausting, but better than the alternative of going broke. My desire to succeed paid off. Within 2 years, I was selling a lot. I sold large deals and long-term contracts into numerous markets. However, I was still not comfortable selling. I sold big-name accounts while still suffering from sales call anxiety. To help alleviate my pain, I went to every sales seminar that I could find. Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Tony Robbins, and many others. All of them were inspirational and great speakers. Nevertheless, within a couple of weeks, the inspiration wore off, and I was back to my usual stressed-out self, still fighting the fear of making sales calls. Our advanced production processes were very disruptive to the marketplace, and we were beating the competition soundly by being the low-cost provider. As a result, many older, established competitors ended up closing, giving us even more market share. But in spite of all we had going for us, I still had not reached the level of having a professional salesperson. Why? Because no one can sell as well as the company president. When owners sell for their own companies, they carry the intangible advantage of having the final say, and buyers take comfort from this. Owners also possess an unmatched belief in their company. When the buyer is dealing with the top of the organization, not the salesperson, the dynamic changes. I see similar situations with a lot of companies that seek out training in the Sandler sales principles. The owner can sell with little resistance, but the new sales hires cannot. The owners are frustrated and angry because their salespeople can't close deals as well as they can. The reality is that the salesperson will never be on par with the owner. Any sales strategy has to allow for this fact. The owner's ability is typically not transferable. Time to cash out? From the start, I built my company with the intention of selling it. After 7 years in business, we had facilities in 3 states, and our client list was a who's who of top companies in the mid-1990s. Mattel, Bausch & Lomb, Fisher-Price, Marvel Entertainment, Sara Lee, and Kodak. Our company led our industry segment in profitability for the final 6 years that I owned it, and as a result, the company was admitted into the industry's Hall of Fame in 2000. Like many entrepreneurs, my plan from the start was to cash out and walk away from the company. Unfortunately, when I put the company up for sale, I learned a hard lesson. I had nothing any intelligent investor would want to buy. As potential suitors looked at the company, they soon realized that I was the #1 salesperson. Who in their right mind would buy that company? When I left, so would the sales. I had fallen into the trap where so many entrepreneurs find themselves stuck. I couldn't sell my company because I didn't build a sales team that could succeed without me. After getting those serious offers, I realized that to reach my goal of selling the company, I had to build a functional sales team that was not dependent on me. I still carried the scars from the 2 non-producing salespeople who had cost me a ton of money. If my new effort were to succeed, I would have to become a sales leader as opposed to being the sales producer. Seeing that I needed help, Chick stepped in once again to advise me. I built a strong sales team in 2 years and went back to market. With a self-sufficient sales force that was producing the vast majority of our revenue, I sold the company for a sizable sum of money. The Sandler Connection. Up to this point in my career, I had yet to hear of David Sandler. It would take a national tragedy for me to make that particular transition. After I sold my company, Dad asked me to come back to his firm and assume the presidency in order to help him sell it. Against the advice of Chick and my wife, I decided to take the position. The mission was to grow sales another $20 million and then put the company on the market. At the time, that was a realistic expectation given the massive industry consolidation then occurring. When I became president, I intended my focus to be on operations. I didn't want to get involved in sales because I still hated sales. I loved finance and production. I was going to depend on the current sales manager to handle the sales team while I focused on the rest of the business. Then, history threw me a curve. 9 months into my new job, the country was devastated by the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. As everyone knows, the business community was hit hard. However, our company felt the pinch more than most printers because the majority of our work was centered on retail, and consumer spending all but stopped. To make matters worse, our company was heavily leveraged due to debt taken on for an expansion, which resulted in defaulting on our loan covenants. The impact on the company from the events of September 11 forced me back into sales again. About this time, I was introduced to Sandler. I hired a local Sandler trainer to work with our team, and I sat in on the sessions to make sure that the training was up to par. The biggest comeback since Lazarus. I found the Sandler content to be great. I studied it extensively. Soon I was using the Sandler principles to help guide the closing of multi-million-dollar contracts, many of which the company still enjoys today. I didn't do this on my own. We had a great sales leader, Jim Monty, and a handful of salespeople who embraced Sandler's concepts and worked hard to turn things around. We won contracts in an intensely competitive environment where we were the highest-priced bidder. I remember the year-end conference with the president of the bank, who was probably planning to recall our credit right after the meeting. He looked at our year-end financials and said, "You guys made the biggest comeback since Lazarus." Seller's remorse. Sales were on track again, so it became time to put the company on the market. Once this process started, my father and other top stakeholders began showing seller's remorse. When I had come into the job, we had agreed that I was going to make the majority of my money on the sale of the company, and now I did not see that happening. Rather than stay on, I decided to give the board a year's notice and go back to school to earn my MBA. After graduating with my MBA, I went looking for my next venture. I wanted to purchase a company or enter into a series of smaller investments with several companies. To make this plan work, I needed to increase my exposure to other businesses outside of my network. I decided to open a Sandler training center. Austin, Texas was on the list of available territories. Even though I had never even visited the city, I chose Austin as a long overdue favor to my wife, Linda, who wanted out of the cold upstate New York weather. As we were moving to Texas, I recall thinking, what could be simpler than a business selling sales training? As I had a successful background selling multi-million-dollar deals, I thought that selling sales training would be a cakewalk. I wish. Take away my network, my financial motivation, because I had enough money to retire, my industry reputation, and my title, and what did I have left? Just my hidden, unresolved, self-limiting beliefs. What were they? Fear of rejection, cold call anxiety, and the need for approval, to name a few. Unlike any other time in my career, I had to cold call at a staggering rate. To make it more difficult, I was selling something intangible, a service that people did not understand or want, regardless of how much they needed it. Now, I had to sell for real. I had to come to grips with the stark reality.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?